Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. This is Arzo, and you're listening to the Sexy Boss Babe podcast and watching us on YouTube. Today's interview is with a male figure from the executive side of the beauty industry. He's someone that has seen it all. He's been involved in the execution and scaling of beauty brands like NYX Cosmetics. He's worked with Disney, Calvin Klein Beauty, Estee Lauder, and so many others. He is a highly sought after consultant and strategist, currently working with Mountain View Consumer Products, Swiss company Bronx Colors, and Rude Cosmetics. He was a key person involved in the global expansion of NYX, which was later acquired by L'Oreal for $500 million. I humbly welcome global brand development expert and beauty industry thought leader, Jeffrey Ten. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Absolutely. I'm so excited that we're able to do this. And now I have been reading your articles for quite some time, being in the beauty industry, learning and following what subject matter experts think and talk about. It's important because it also helps me decide what my next moves are. And you have a lot of great information. You always seem to have your finger on the pulse of what's about to happen before it happens. How long have you been in the beauty industry, and what kind of got you started?
Well, I started this business in 1980, and it really originated from college when I was studying at Drexel University. I was really originally looking to get into fashion, and when I went to the career counselors, they said, well, we have this beauty job with Francis Denny, and I didn't know anything about beauty. I thought that was all for girls, but I started working with them in Philadelphia in their plant, and from there on, before I graduated, I sent my resumes to all the beauty companies and got started. My first job with Elizabeth Arden back in 1980, and since then I've been in beauty, working globally with the biggest companies as well as small startups.
Definitely. I've seen your work, kind of just across the board there. And I'm going to definitely ask you some questions about the recent article that came out about Kylie Cosmetics and Kylie Jenner. We'll get to that a little bit later. But I did want to ask you just a few questions to kind of just tie in what's going on a little bit right now with regards to the beauty industry and our current political climate. Our beauty industry is a little bit, I think, it's historically been a little bit exclusive. And with everything that's going on, there's a lot of talk about inclusivity. How do you think that the beauty industry is taking that aspect of it?
Well, it's been going on since the beginning of social media and the internet. Back in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, the business was dominated by big players, and you had to be big because it was costly to go into retail to buy real estate in department stores or mass volume retailers, drugstores, etc. And then when the beginning of social media and internet, you could open up a site for a couple $1,000s, and so it leveled the playing field and gave access to anybody that had an idea for a beauty brand to reach out. And it's made it much more easier and more affordable for brands to go to market. Another possibility for a lot of brands was the growth of the home shopping business, right, on television, because the home shopping channels like QVC and HSN and others were always hunting for these new small brands because these founders could tell a story. And that's what boded well on TV, because women had time in their hands and they wanted to hear about how their fellow women would, develop a brand. So between internet and home shopping and what we call today the direct-to-consumer business, it just made access much easier than ever before.
I think that's really spot on. Definitely spot on. Us being an indie beauty brand as well. It's I think, as opposed to 10 years ago, it was a lot easier for us to kind of get into the market now. And focusing on that inclusivity is really important for us too. So it's nice to hear that that's the direction that the industry is going. Now, we're going through so many things in the world right now. We've got the protests going on, but with the backdrop of the pandemic. And we have talked, you've mentioned it in different articles and you've posted about it on LinkedIn. So many things are being affected right now because of the coronavirus pandemic. The supply chains have been affected. so many brick and mortar stores have started to close down different locations. What are your thoughts on that aspect of it? What is going on? What does the future of the beauty industry look like when it comes to that?
Well, there's been a lot of, obviously, change has been going on even prior to the pandemic. What I said in a recent article is the pandemic accelerated, um, I would say, some of the process of department stores, which were already in financial trouble, and also a lot of the professional beauty stores, not just the big chains like Sally Beauty, but some of the independents that were really dependent on local communities. And with them being closed now, the e-commerce, which was roughly 10 to 12% of the beauty business, has blossomed to over 50%.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really hard for the retailers, but more so for the department stores that, especially stores that are in shopping malls, because the malls, even though some stores are slowly opening now, malls are still empty, and these stores are going to be really struggling. Chains like JCPenney is closing down more and more stores, and even ones that are on what I call the bubble, like Kohl's, are going to have problems as well. And Macy's already as well as closed a lot of stores. Barney's went bankrupt. Neiman Marcus is in bankruptcy. So a lot of these things were already in the offing, and again, the pandemic just accelerated that and has kind of blossomed into the direct to sales business, direct to consumer, and e-commerce was just as exploded.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is going to happen with regards to the beauty customer specifically? Because traditionally people like to go to the department store and get that one-on-one feel for the makeup and have that experience and that service. And with everything that's going on, with social distancing, with the closing down of the stores, how is that going to pan out for customers that want that experience, or for brands and stores even?
Yeah, well, it's a really tricky situation, because I always talk about the beauty business, particularly makeup, because makeup has always been depending on testing the product, perfume as well. And now with restrictions, not just in the US, but globally, of testing, that means the customer cannot walk up to a test tube anymore and put a lipstick on her wrist, just can't do it. So what has happened, some of the big display companies like RPG, and there are others around the United States that build cosmetic displays, are coming up with newer schemes. They're quite more expensive, because in the old days you could just put a layer of testers out and people could put their fingers in it, and you can't do that anymore. So some of these display companies are creating dispensers that are kind of self-contained with small little bullets that you kind of are contained in a wrapper, and you got to open it up. Mm-hmm. But of course, that opens up another problem for the green movement, because now you have disposal of all these little samples like the perfume business does, giving out small swatches. Mm-hmm. But obviously it's going to evolve. It's going to be a problem, because a lot of what drives beauty is testing and sampling. Mm-hmm. But on the flip side, prior to the pandemic has been a growing business in what I call the whole visual AR business, artificial intelligence, where other artificial technologies, where you can take a picture of your skin and put on whatever you want, and that's been growing through companies like Perfect Corporation and others that have been collaborating with L'Oreal and Lauder and other companies. So again, that was always prior to the pandemic and was gathering traction, and now it's really the only way you can really try on makeup is by using these artificial virtual intelligence softwares, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. So again, all these things were out there before the pandemic. It's just going to be much more important now. And even companies that, one of my friends that I know you interviewed with at Beauty Barrage, she has kind of pivoted a lot during the pandemic, and because she can't send her people anymore out to go to train in stores because there aren't people out there. She's going online and creating YouTube videos and other types of ways of demonstrating makeup. So makeup is going to be easy. It already has been growing through social media and through influencers. Perfume is a different one because you can't really spray perfume. So I think what will end up happening, it's going to be dependent on the vials and samples that have been, the bedrock of the perfume business. And it means that have to be more going out there. And then again, going back to what I said earlier, the direct-to-consumer business, there are companies out there like Hello Body, that is a recent body care company that kind of creates customized lines for different segments, and then they send them out to people to get reactions. So kind of like mini focus groups. So it's all going to be focused on small segments of populations, which is, again, bodes great for small entrepreneurs that, first of all, wouldn't want to produce big quantities anyway, but it will obviously be a little bit more niche oriented and more work, but that's just the way it's going to go right now.
There's so many changes. It's so many changes, and that's interesting that you brought up that the larger companies are going to focus a little bit more on the AI, but for the smaller companies, some of those focus groups and it's more sampling sounds like the way that it's going to be moving forward.
Yeah, and actually that was the intention from the beginning. When companies created samples, and I've worked for some of the big ones, and we would, give away 500, 1,000 vials per month to a department store door, and you had no idea where they went. Most of the time, the beauty advisors just opened up the drawers, and if someone came by, they said, "Here, take them." And so now we can't do that. So in many respects, the samples, obviously they'll have to be mailed out, which costs a couple dollars. But actually now it's, who it's going to. So it's really how it was intended to go. Instead of just dumping samples in the drawer, they're now going to go out to the actual person, and you can talk to that person after they got the sample. So and you get their reactions, which is what Hello Body's doing. So again, it's really the way it was always supposed to be, where the sample was supposed to go to a person, and then you're supposed to find out whether they liked it or not, whether they like to try something else, and then hopefully get a sale. I mean, Sephora has been doing this for many, many years and been very, very successful with their sampling program, because they go exactly to the customer and they continue to prod till they get the right combination of products the customer wants, and their ROI is incredible. They get like a $5 return rate almost when they do these sampling programs. So I mean, it does work. It's proven to work, and it's just the way it has to be right now.
I was laughing because with the sample story, I used to work for Lancome and for Bobbi Brown, and that's what we did. We were beauty advisors, and we had our sample drawer, and we just throw stuff in the customer's bag, hoping they would come back. So that's
right. I mean, you just wanted to get rid of them, or you wanted to make something happy. But something interesting has happened with that whole program. I was recently with a perfume company who were noticing that our samples were ending up on Amazon and eBay at crazy prices. And so we knew what was happening because it was so limited distribution. We knew that it had to be coming through Barney's, which was our only retailer. And so, but the funny thing was that people would pay upwards of $20 for a sample that we gave to Barney's for free. But then we tracked it, and we realized a lot of them came back and spent the $250 for the bottle of perfume, because when they spent $18 for like a small, like 0.13 ounces, they still were way overpaying what they could get for the bottle. Right. So it proves that it does work. That if people like a fragrance in a sample and they go on to spend up to $20 for a small vial, that if they like it, they will come back and buy. So it is a proven, way of garnering orders in business that, goes back to the time of Estee Lauder. I'll just tell you a funny story about that. When she was trying to get into Saks in the 40s, she would wait in front of the buying office every day for the buyer to come out and give her 5 minutes. And she sat there for weeks on end. The buyer always kind of left her sitting there. This is Mrs. Lauder. Yeah. And so finally, what she did, she went down to she walked out of the Saks perfume department, and she just dropped the bottle of her Youth Dew on the floor. And everybody campered around and said, what is that great fragrance? And all of a sudden, the buyer saw her and she got into Saks. So there's, a perfect example. When you smell a fragrance and people want it, you have a business there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. It's a great story. It reminds me of me. I'm sitting, kind of same thing, sitting in front of Macy's and, waiting for a buyer. I heard some buyers were going to be there. I love stories like that. So the next thing that I wanted to focus a little bit on is manufacturing. A lot of the products are manufactured in the beauty industry overseas, France, Germany, Italy, and a lot in China. Korea. What do you think is going to happen with regards to that, with regards to the international trade, import-export, the cost of manufacturing? Are we going to move manufacturing here, do you think? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is the best thing to happen?
Well, it's a complicated question. First of all, there are already, both in the US and Canada, some very, very high quality, we call contractors in our business, that manufacture makeup, that make skincare, that make perfumes. They've been around since forever. Now, again, on the prestige side, a company could choose, and Chanel itself, for example, if we take Chanel, for example, if you buy Chanel in France, it's made in France, but they have their own operation in New Jersey for the US market. And so it's been going on for quite a long time now that, of course, even the multi-billion companies, Estee Lauder, again, they have a Long Island plant and they have plants all over Europe and Asia. So, it always has gone to developing logistics and supply chains closer to your business, not just for saving distribution costs, but also because it's all so unpredictable. Like with this pandemic, who would have known what was going to happen? And all of a sudden, the doors are opening up again, and some stores are doing very well. So manufacturing has always been in the United States. And again, for the prestige business, they have the luxury to play around because if you're selling a perfume, let's say for, I don't know, throw out a number, $100 US, you can afford this to ship it around. It's different when you get into a mass product. If you're selling a lipstick in the mass range for, let's say, $6, and you need a cost of goods, let's say, of around 60 cents, then it becomes a problem because it's almost impossible to make a lipstick in the US for 60 cents. You can make them in China for 15 to 20 cents. So it's more of a challenge for the mass brands than the prestige brands. And of course, for the entrepreneurs, the indie brands that's doing a run for 500 pieces or 1,000 pieces, they would never make it in China anyway. They always would make it in the United States. So what has happened over the past, let's say, I think it's the last 12, 18 months, when Trump introduced duties on Chinese-made cosmetics, which now is 25%, what has happened is good news for the contractors because now by the time you add logistics and the duty, it's starting to get a little bit closer. It's not exactly the same, but it's starting to be where even for mass brands, it may be more efficient to make in the United States unless these duties go away, which I don't think they will. I think Trump is going to keep them in place, and depending on who wins the next election, if these duties stay in place in China, it's already hurting Chinese factories, and it's going to hurt the big multinationals that were making goods in China. And in terms of Europe, right now the dollar, of course, a lot of times it also comes into play are the currencies, and right now the dollar is pretty strong. So what that means is that European-made goods are cheaper now coming to the United States. So where the dollar is right now and where the duties are right now for European-made goods, because there is no duty for French-made cosmetics. So that's great for Chanel, Dior, LVMH. It's bad news for the Chinese. So it's always a geopolitical situation, and it changes all the time. But right now, it's boding well for U.S. manufacturing because of the duty and because of the pandemic. And the last thing I'll hit on is the whole challenge in China. And I've worked in China for many years with factories, is unfortunately you can't always police what's in a product made in China. And I've warned people that it's not necessarily something the Chinese do on purpose, but they're all entrepreneurs. And if they can't source a certain ingredient, sometimes they'll replace it with something else and not tell the manufacturer, thinking they won't find out. And then all of a sudden something ends up in the formula that they didn't want. So again, it's not just China, but Chinese tend to be a little bit less reliable. And if you mentioned Japan and Korea, they tend to be, I would say, at that quality standard of Europe or even higher. The Japanese probably and the Koreans have some of the highest standards in the world. They certainly even best the US. So if you really want quality, you go to Japan or Korea, or you go to Europe, and then the US, and obviously China is probably the least reliable today.
Mm-hmm. What, with regards to brand, what do you think makes a successful brand? And there's a rise of the indies, but we also have the existing traditional staple big box brands. There's also a change in the taste of the consumer, I think. Earlier we talked about it, and you mentioned people looking for a story and that sort of thing. So in your opinion, right now in today's market with today's consumer, what do you think is a good brand?
Well, let's just talk about the components of what makes a good brand. It really hasn't changed, except with the advent of social media, it's becoming more important. And the first thing is, obviously, you have to have a brand that can break through, that has a reason for being. Just putting somebody's name on a product, unless they are really, really big in social media, like maybe a Jeffree Star, or the Kardashians, as we talked about, they get, I guess, a bit of a benefit because they got millions of followers. But for the rest of us mortals out there, we have to have a brand that really breaks through, that has a real story. And we mentioned, brands that are on QVC and HSN. When the founder gets on TV and explains how they developed this brand and what makes it different, that really resonates. So I call that, the content of the brand, the building blocks, the pillars of the brand. And that's probably the most important thing today. If you really can't tell a story, if there's no really great reason for being or no content in it, it's not going to break through. And then obviously there's the creativity part, which is really important. And between the creativity and the content, these are kind of the big pillars. And again, these kinds of things resonate greatly online, greatly on YouTube, and of course on home shopping channels. So that's again why it's really the great time for the indie brands, because they tend to come up with ideas that the big guys maybe thought of or threw out, and they just do it because they go to a contractor, whether they're in California, New Jersey, or anywhere in the U.S. There's contractors all over the United States, and they'll make things. The contractors really support indie brands because they know that maybe 20 or 30 indie brands, 5 of them are going to really explode, and they want to be on the coattails when these explode. So it really comes down to those key things: is having something with a story, having great creativity, and then the rest will follow through. If you have a great point of difference and great creativity, then it'll go through. And then the third thing, which is, I guess, more important for skincare, is performance. Because if you don't have a name like Clinique or Estee Lauder or L'Oreal, all these big names can put something in a bottle and just put it out there. At least they could in the past. And they'd immediately sell 100,000 pieces just getting out in distribution. But if you need performance today, and performance is really tough, you need to have clinicals done with either doctors or with patients to really show that skincare really works. And there have been some breakthrough products over the years with some new technologies out there. So again, it varies a bit, but again, when you talk about makeup, it's really about the creativity and the content.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Really good information. We're going to take a quick little break here, hear a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back. And that's for our podcast folks, but here on YouTube, we're going to just keep going. Welcome back, everyone. Jeffrey, one of the next questions that I wanted to ask you is your experience working with NYX Cosmetics. I love Tony's story because she, started, at this mom and pop level, worked at her mom's beauty store, and took a $250,000 loan from her mom, started NYX Cosmetics with a line of 10 lip liners, and blew up to this incredible company that was worth hundreds of millions of dollars, got sold to L'Oreal, from what I understand through partly through your help, helping scale that brand from what it was to a global brand. So tell me about that experience.
Well, it was a great experience. I've actually been through this with a couple of entrepreneurs, including the previous perfume company, where sometimes you have great products, but you need to know how to present it, how to position it. When I came to NYX, I mean, it was clicking along in what we call the professional beauty channel. And that's one of the secrets that Tony had, was because the professional beauty channel, which today in the United States is somewhere around upwards of 20,000 doors, some are independent, some are chains. They are much more forgiving than the chains like Sephora and Ulta and Macy's and CVS and Walgreens. They're independent, they will take new things. And because Tony's family was already in that channel, they had access to these professional stores. So that's where she started. She was clicking along at somewhere north of the high teens and the millions of dollars, 18 million dollars. But she really hadn't gotten pierced into the retail business. And she really wasn't sure how to do it. And that's what I brought to the game, and a number of other people that came in at the same time, Scott Friedman and Brandon Muegi. And what we tried to do was really position this as a real brand. And Tony knew how to make products, but she basically did. I don't know if it was in any of the articles that you read. She would go every Friday into Sephora, to Neiman Marcus, to Saks. She would find out whatever the best-selling makeup was in any brand, and then she would take it back to her office, try it on herself, send it over to China, and ask them to make it for 70, 80 cents. And she would fill up her warehouse with this stuff, and then she would send it out to those professional stores. What she didn't really understand was that she really had a real brand. She thought this was a great way of selling, buying something cheap, selling it for not too much markup, and really what she was saying, making a mass MAC product. She called it MAC for the masses. That was one of her big things. But what we did when we came in as a team was create a real proper brand with this thing. And we did a number of initiatives that I don't know if L'Oreal is still carrying through, but we kind of were one of the early purveyors into social media. We created a platform that was called a runway show for makeup. And we did something with a collaboration with the TV studios, and we really just elevated that brand. And that's what it needed. It was doing okay, but we elevated it through social media, through these collaborations with the movie studios. One famous one was Dark Shadows. The movie itself with Johnny Depp and Michelle Pfeiffer didn't do well, but we created a makeup kit for it, and it blew out in a couple of weeks in Ulta. And from that makeup kit, we created that whole runway show, which attracted influencers from literally all over the world, even though it was only a U.S. contest. And the winner from that came from Alaska, of all places. So who would have thought, I think she was 17 years old, but she had the greatest look from Dark Shadows, and it just created a snowball effect where NYX just became literally one of the top 5 brands in social media.
It definitely, I just seeing it on the professional side with the makeup artists, with the pro makeup artists, and the influencers, it's just absolutely incredible seeing what that brand, where it started and where it went. So congratulations to you as well. That's a pretty big accomplishment. So the next thing that everybody's been asking about is the Forbes article. So Kylie Jenner, everybody knows the Kardashians and the Jenners, and she started Kylie Cosmetics, had it for a while and then sold it off to Coty recently, within the last year. And it looks like there's some troubles. There was some inflation of revenues, and she claimed to be a billionaire, which I guess she's not. And so Forbes took that title back from her. And Forbes asked you to comment on the situation, you being an expert in this industry. What's your take on what is going on with that?
Well, it's still a complex situation. And of course, if you read the blowback from Coty over the last couple of days, they're pretty much saying, oh, well, this doesn't matter. We are collaborating well with Kylie. In fact, they just announced a collaboration with Kim Kardashian, so they're getting even deeper with the Kardashian Jenner family with this. And to be honest, even when I was interviewed on the Independent Beauty magazine prior to the Forbes article, it's a mixed bag because there's no doubt, there's no question, she has a tremendous following. So no matter what her sales volume is, she's one of the top 10 influencers in the United States. And who knows, with all this, she may even get even stronger. So her fans, don't necessarily care about Forbes. And neither does really, it sounds like Peter Harf, who's the CEO of Coty, he doesn't seem to care either. And frankly, it'll remain to be seen, whether it really even affects. I mean, Forbes obviously got a black eye with this because they were obviously misled. But the beauty makeup artists and the influencers and the bloggers couldn't really give a hoot about Forbes. So ultimately, it could even be a benefit, as her mother, Chris, has done many times, turned negatives into positives. This whole thing with her lips, and there was the whole question whether it was her lip gloss that plumped her lips, and they said, oh, it was a lip gloss, and all of a sudden they finally admitted she had injections. Her business even took off even more after that. So, her mother, Chris, is just a magician. She turns the worst negative into a positive. So we don't really know. In the end, time will tell what happens. I mean, she's certainly strong. She's one of the top 10 social media people in the makeup world. Huda, of course, is a little stronger right now, and there are some others. But this business is fluid. She could go up, she could go down. So for the moment, time will tell. A lot of it will really be determined on how she really collaborates with Coty. A lot of times founders, when big companies buy them out, the big company says, well, stay with us for a while, but we will take over. And this is exactly what happened recently with L'Oreal. Tony Ko was involved. Mm-hmm. And now she's gone, and L'Oreal's running it completely by their own company, and they've had some challenges with it. NYX has kind of lost some steam if you look around the industry. So it varies. When founders sell their companies, sometimes they're very involved and things continue growing for a while, and then sometimes the big companies say, thank you so much, we don't need you anymore. Here's your check and goodbye. So it'll remain to be seen how much Kylie still gets engaged with it, and if she does still engage. And the other player in this, which there's not been much talk about, is Seed Beauty. Seed Beauty is the company that made all the Kylie Jenner products. They're out in Oxnard, California, and they really created the brand. I mean, in all honesty, certainly Kylie created a lot of excitement, but Seed made the products. They're an experienced makeup manufacturer, and Coty doesn't have a good track record on the prestige side. They have Rimmel and they have some other makeup brands, but they are really newbies in the prestige side. So they'll have to, again, time will tell whether Seed still is going to do the manufacturing or it moves over to Coty factories and their product development people, and how well they're going to work with Kylie. So we all have to wait and see what happens.
Okay, so it's exciting. It's exciting to see what happens. A lot of drama there.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to ask you just one last question here. With all of your experience, and you've really, like I said, you've been there, you've seen it, you've done it. What's your coolest memory of working with some of these brands, or just being in the industry for as long as you have?
Yeah, well, there are stories everywhere, and I guess the one thing that always takes back to me is, again, I'll revert back to Mrs. Lauder, who's been going on, I think she's died around 7 or 8 years ago. But if anybody still I can like to recall is most prolific in this industry, you know, I used to meet her at some of the Estee Lauder sales meetings and in the office, and she always would say, well, you know, you can do it on television, you can do it on the telephone, but there's never a better way to tell your makeup brand than to tell a woman. And of course, when she told this out there in her sales meetings, this was back in the late 80s or mid 80s, before there was internet, before there was social media. And it still holds true today that there's no better way to tell a brand in its best ways than telling another woman. So today, obviously through YouTube and social media. So I remember one of my fond memories when you know, we were out there, Mrs. Lauder and at that time Evelyn Lauder, who also passed away not that long ago. We went to Russia, and you know, Russia had just opened up the market, and we went into an indoor kind of shopping mall called Soon in Moscow. And Estee Lauder had just opened up the store, and you know, even the big brands were just discovering Russia. I'm dating myself, but this was back in the 80s and 90s. And you know, again, things haven't changed. Things like pandemics and social media, but it's all about touching the customer and getting back there. And when Evelyn Lauder came there, in this case it was Evelyn, not Estee, you know, people just lined up because people want to meet the founders. And this will not change. No matter what company I've been with, when the founder is there, or, you know, Evelyn wasn't the founder, but she was, you know, the wife of Leonard Lauder, they want to touch and feel these people. And that's never going to change. No matter where this business goes, on what media, whether it's social media or whatever it is, women will always have interest in two things. Want to know what's new out there. They always will have a hunger for what's new, and meeting the person that founded the company. Mm-hmm. And it'll take, as I said, many platforms, but I think this is the curiosity of women. I don't think that's ever going to change.
I think you're right. I think you're really right, because it kind of lends to, how did she do it? If she could do it, maybe I could do it.
Exactly.
Well, Jeffrey, thank you so much. If people want to get in touch with you, maybe for media purposes or anything, is there a way that they can get a hold of you through social media or anything?
Of course. They can reach me through LinkedIn. They can reach me also with CEW, as I've mentored over 80 women in the last 18 years. They can reach me on the CEW through MentorNet. Or lastly, they can just email me at jeff10@att.net. I'll answer to any of those ways, and happy to help any future entrepreneurs out there.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. This has been such a treat for me, just connecting with you, having the opportunity to speak with you, and listening to your wealth of knowledge. So thank you so much for doing this with me today. This is a great memory for me.
My pleasure.
And everyone else, if you'd like to get in touch with me personally, you can on Instagram. My handle is @the_Arzo_Yusuf. Sexy Boss Babe is @the_Sexy_Boss_Babe. You can also check out our website, sexybossbabe.com. Thanks so much, everyone. Till next time.